I never imagined that a simple cab ride could unravel my life in such a catastrophic manner. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the leaves crunch underfoot and the sky seems impossibly wide. I was sitting at my kitchen table, idly flipping through emails, when my phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but the name attached to it wasn't. Tyler Rogers, an old friend from college. We'd lost touch over the years, and I had no idea why he was calling me now. "Hey, Tyler," I answered, trying to mask the disinterest in my voice. "Long time no talk." "Yeah, no kidding," Tyler's voice crackled through the speaker. "Listen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I've got something that you need to see." I frowned. "Bad news? What's going on?" "Look, I know this is going to sound crazy, but just hear me out," Tyler continued. "I work part-time as a dispatcher for a local cab company. A few days ago, I was going through the footage from one of our driver's cameras, and I saw something that involves you." My heart started to race. "Involves me? What are you talking about?" "There's no easy way to say this," Tyler's voice grew serious. "I saw your wife, Julia, getting out of one of our cabs. She didn't have any money for the fare, so she was, well, let's just say she wasn't paying with cash." My mind raced, trying to process his words. "Wait, are you saying?" "Yes," Tyler cut me off. "She was with the driver. And it wasn't just a quick interaction. From the footage, it looked pretty clear that she was, getting involved with him." The world spun around me as I stared blankly at my laptop screen. Julia, my wife of 7 years, had always presented herself as the epitome of loyalty and dedication. The thought of her cheating was inconceivable. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm sure," Tyler replied. "I can send you the footage if you want. But I thought you should hear this from me first." I thanked Tyler and ended the call, my hands trembling. The urge to confront Julia immediately was overpowering, but I knew I needed to be calm and deliberate. I paced around my apartment, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered trust. A few hours later, Tyler sent me a link to the video footage. I watched it with a growing sense of horror as Julia's familiar face appeared on the screen. She was in the back seat of the cab, leaning forward, her voice low and pleading with the driver. The driver's response was muffled, but it was clear that a transaction was taking place. I couldn't see the explicit details, but the implication was enough to send me reeling. I felt a wave of emotions, betrayal, anger, sadness, crashing over me. The woman who I had trusted and loved had reduced our relationship to something sordid and shameful. The depth of my hurt was almost physical. The following days were a blur. I avoided Julia, barely spoke to her, and lost myself in a haze of rage and despair. I started to hatch a plan, one that would not only address the betrayal but also give me a sense of retribution. The more I thought about it, the clearer my course of action became. I began by gathering evidence. I collected copies of financial records, phone logs, and any other documents that could support my case in court. My aim was to build a strong case for divorce, one that would ensure Julia would face the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to understand the weight of her betrayal and the impact it had on my life. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of preparing my case, Julia came home and found me sitting at the dining table, going through a stack of papers. Her face was a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Hey, what's all this?" she asked, her voice trying to sound casual but betraying a hint of nervousness. I looked up, my expression steely. "We need to talk." Julia's face fell as she sat down across from me. "What's going on?" "I've seen the footage," I said, my voice cold. "I know everything." Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence between us was heavy, suffused with the weight of her guilt and my anger. "I'm filing for divorce," I continued, my resolve firm. "And I'm going to make sure you know exactly why." Her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and desperation. "Please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing left to talk about," I interrupted. I'm done. You've ruined everything. With that, I stood up, leaving Julia sitting there, stunned and silent. I could feel the numbness of finality settling in, a cold satisfaction mixed with the pain of the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that I had never wanted but was now inescapable. As I walked away from the table, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. The path ahead was clear, but the road to moving on from this betrayal was just beginning. The days following my confrontation with Julia were filled with a quiet intensity that I hadn't known I was capable of. Every morning, I awoke with a clear sense of purpose, a stark contrast to the aimless dread that had consumed me before. This was no longer about just surviving the betrayal, it was about reclaiming control over my life. And part of that control meant ensuring that Julia felt the full weight of her actions. The first person I reached out to was Matt, my closest friend and a lawyer who specialized in family law. We'd been friends since high school, and if there was anyone who could help me navigate the legal quagmire ahead, it was him. Matt and I met at our usual spot, a dimly lit bar downtown. The place was almost empty when I walked in, the sound of clinking glasses and low murmurs providing a somber backdrop to the conversation I was about to have. Tom, Matt greeted me with a firm handshake as I slid into the booth across from him. His usually jovial face was serious, his blue eyes narrowed in concern. I'm sorry about everything, man. I never thought something like this would happen to you. I nodded, still not entirely comfortable with the pity in his voice. I appreciate it. But I need your help. I'm going to divorce her, and I want to make sure I come out on top. Matt leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest. You've got the upper hand here, especially with that footage. But you need to be careful, Tom. These things can get messy fast. Are you sure you're ready for this? I looked him squarely in the eye. More than ready. She needs to know that actions have consequences. All right then, Matt said, pulling out a notepad. Let's go over everything. We'll need to build a strong case, not just for the divorce, but also to make sure you're protected financially. Do you have copies of all your shared assets, bank accounts, and property deeds? Yeah, I've got everything, I replied, sliding a folder across the table. I've been preparing for this. Matt flipped through the documents, nodding in approval. This is good. We'll also need to figure out how to approach the issue of the footage. It's pretty damning, but it might be tricky to use in court without raising questions about how it was obtained. I frowned. Isn't it enough that I know what happened? Legally, it's not that simple, Matt said. But don't worry, we'll work it out. Just be prepared for a fight. Julia might try to play the victim card, especially if she gets a lawyer who's willing to get dirty. The thought of Julia trying to twist the narrative made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. Whatever it takes, Matt. I want this to be over. As we discussed the details, I noticed a familiar figure entering the bar, Tyler. He must have spotted me too because he made a beeline for our booth, a grim expression on his face. Tom, I'm glad I found you, Tyler said, nodding to Matt before turning back to me. I've been thinking about everything, and there's something you should know. What is it? I asked, my stomach tightening. Tyler hesitated, glancing around as if he wasn't sure how to say it. I've been doing some digging since I showed you that footage. It turns out that this cab driver, the guy Julia was with, is not exactly clean. There's a whole underground network of guys like him who take advantage of women in vulnerable situations. It's a sick business. What do you mean? I asked, my heart pounding. I mean, Julia might have been targeted. I'm not saying she's innocent, what she did was wrong, but there might be more to the story. This guy could have blackmailed her or pressured her into something she couldn't get out of. I felt a flicker of doubt, but I quickly smothered it. So, you're saying she was a victim? Maybe, Tyler said, his voice low. But even if she was, it doesn't change the fact that she cheated on you. It just means that this guy might be more dangerous than we thought. Matt cleared his throat, breaking the tension. This complicates things, Tom. If this guy really is part of something bigger, you need to be careful. Going after Julia might expose you to more risk than you bargained for. I stared at the table, my mind racing. Could there really be more to the story? Was Julia just a pawn in some twisted game? Or was this just another excuse, another way to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her? Do you know where this guy is now? I asked Tyler, my voice sharp. He's still driving for the same company, but he's keeping a low profile, Tyler replied. I can get more information if you want, but it's risky. Do it, I said, my jaw set. I need to know everything. As Tyler left the bar, Matt looked at me with concern. You're getting in deep, Tom. Are you sure this is the road you want to go down? I met his gaze, feeling the weight of my decision. I need to know the truth, Matt. Whatever it is. I can't move on until I do. Matt sighed, sliding the folder of documents back to me. Just remember, sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lies. I nodded, slipping the folder into my bag. The plan was already in motion, but now it seemed like I was dealing with more than just a cheating wife. If there was something darker at play, I needed to be prepared. As I left the bar and walked into the chilly night, I felt a mix of determination and unease. The next steps would be crucial, and I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about uncovering the full extent of the betrayal and making sure that everyone involved paid the price. One thing was certain, Julia's life was about to get a lot more complicated, and I was going to be right there, watching it all unfold. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity. Tyler stays true to his word, digging deeper into the cab driver's background. Meanwhile, I dive headfirst into preparing for the divorce, burying my emotions under a mountain of legal documents and strategic plans. Matt calls frequently, keeping me updated on the progress of our case. The more we dig, the more complicated things become, and the more determined I grow to see this through to the bitter end. It's late on a Wednesday evening when Tyler calls me again. His voice is strained, almost breathless. Tom, you need to meet me. I've got something big. I agree to meet him at his place, a small apartment on the outskirts of town. It's a modest place, cluttered with the detritus of a bachelor lifestyle, empty takeout containers, stacks of old DVDs, and a layer of dust that suggests cleaning isn't a high priority. Tyler is pacing when I arrive, his face pale and drawn. What's going on? I ask, shutting the door behind me. He stops pacing long enough to hand me a folder, similar to the one I'd been lugging around for days now. This is everything I could find on the cab driver. His name is Rick Walters. The guy's got a record, and not just for petty stuff. He's been involved in some serious crimes, blackmail, extortion, even a couple of cases that hint at trafficking. I flip through the documents, my stomach churning. There are police reports, grainy surveillance photos, and even a few witness statements. Rick Walters isn't just some sleazy cab driver, he's a predator, someone who preys on vulnerable women like Julia. This guy is dangerous, Tom, Tyler continues. I don't know how deep Julia is in, but if she's involved with him, even tangentially, she's in serious trouble. I lean against the wall, trying to process this new information. So what are you saying? That Julia was forced into this? I'm saying it's possible, Tyler says, his voice urgent. I don't know if she was blackmailed or if she got in over her head, but this guy doesn't just target random women. He finds out what makes them tick, what they're afraid of, and then he exploits it. I feel a cold knot of fear tightening in my chest. Does she know? Does Julia know who he really is? Tyler shrugs. Hard to say. Maybe she thinks he's just a sleazy guy looking for a freebie. Or maybe she knows and doesn't care. Either way, this complicates things. I nod slowly, my mind racing. If Julia's involvement with Walters is deeper than I thought, I need to rethink my approach. This isn't just about revenge anymore, it's about getting to the truth, no matter how dark it might be. I need to talk to her, I say finally. I need to find out what she knows. That's a risky move, Tom, Tyler warns. If she's scared, she might lie. Or worse, she might try to protect him. I don't have a choice, I reply. I need answers. Tyler doesn't argue. Instead, he pulls out a small USB drive and hands it to me. This is a copy of the footage from the cab. You might want to watch it again before you talk to her. There's something in there. I can't put my finger on it, but I think you need to see it with fresh eyes. I take the USB drive, my hand trembling slightly. Thanks, Tyler. I'll let you know what happens. Back at my apartment, I sit in front of my laptop, the USB drive plugged in and ready to go. I hesitate for a moment, my finger hovering over the play button. Part of me doesn't want to watch it again, doesn't want to relive the humiliation and pain. But Tyler's words echo in my mind, urging me to see what I might have missed. I hit play, and the video begins. It's the same scene I've already watched a dozen times, Julia in the back seat, Rick Walters in the front. But this time, I focus on the details, trying to catch whatever Tyler saw. The camera angle is awkward, and the audio isn't great, but I can hear enough to make out the conversation. Julia is nervous, fidgeting with her hands as she speaks. Rick leans back, his eyes cold and calculating, his voice low and threatening. There's something about the way he looks at her, something that sends a chill down my spine. Then, I notice it, Julia's phone lying on the seat next to her. It's a small detail, easily overlooked, but something about it seems off. I pause the video and zoom in on the phone. The screen is dark, but the way it's positioned, angled slightly toward Rick, makes me wonder if she was recording the conversation. My heart skips a beat. Could it be that Julia was trying to gather evidence against him? Was she planning to expose Rick Walters and got caught in his trap instead? The thought fills me with a mix of hope and dread. If Julia was trying to protect herself, maybe she wasn't as complicit as I thought. But if Rick found out? I shake my head, trying to clear my thoughts. There's only one way to find out the truth. I need to confront Julia and get her to tell me everything. The next morning, I wait for Julia to leave the house before I follow her. She doesn't suspect a thing, her routine as predictable as ever. She heads to her usual cafe, the one she frequents when she wants to be alone. I wait outside, watching her through the window as she sips her coffee, her expression distant and troubled. Finally, I gather the courage to walk in. Julia's eyes widen when she sees me, and for a moment, she looks like a deer caught in headlights. But she quickly recovers, masking her surprise with a forced smile. "Tom," she says, her voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I sit down across from her, my gaze unwavering. "We need to talk." She swallows hard, her hands trembling slightly as she sets her coffee cup down. "About what?" "About Rick Walters," I say bluntly. "And about what's really going on." Julia's face pales, and she looks around the cafe, as if checking to see if anyone is listening. "I don't know what you're talking about," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't lie to me, Julia," I snap, my patience wearing thin. "I know who he is. I know what he does. And I know you've been involved with him." Tears spring to her eyes, but she quickly blinks them away. "Tom, please, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I demand. Because right now, all I see is a woman who betrayed me with a man who's nothing but a criminal. Julia's shoulders slump, and for a moment, she looks like she's about to break down. But then she takes a deep breath, steeling herself. "I didn't want to do it, Tom. I swear. But he has something on me, something I couldn't risk getting out." "What does he have on you?" I ask, leaning forward. She hesitates, her eyes filling with a mixture of fear and shame. "He knows about the money, Tom. The money I borrowed from the wrong people a few years ago. I thought I'd paid them off, but they kept demanding more. And when I couldn't pay, Rick stepped in. He offered to help me, but it wasn't help. It was just another trap." My mind races, trying to process what she's saying. "So you got involved with him to protect yourself?" "Yes," she whispers, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. He threatened to ruin me, to ruin us. I thought I could handle it, but he kept pushing, demanding more. And then he told me I had to pay in other ways. A sick feeling settles in my stomach. You mean? Julia nods, unable to meet my eyes. It was just supposed to be one time. I thought if I did it, he'd leave me alone. But he didn't. He kept coming back, asking for more, threatening me every time I said no. I sit back, the weight of her words crushing me. Why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed, she says, her voice cracking. I didn't want you to know how stupid I'd been, how weak. And I thought I could fix it on my own. The anger I've been holding onto starts to waver, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Julia, you should have told me. We could have dealt with this together. I know, she whispers, her face crumpling. But it's too late now, isn't it? I don't answer. Instead, I reach across the table, taking her hand in mine. She flinches at first, but then she grips my hand tightly, as if holding on for dear life. I'm going to fix this, I say quietly. We're going to fix this. But you have to tell me everything, Julia. No more lies. She nods, her eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. I'll tell you everything. I promise. As I sit there, holding my wife's hand, I realize that the road ahead is going to be more complicated than I ever imagined. The betrayal is still there, the hurt still raw, but now there's something else, something darker, more dangerous. And I'm going to have to face it head on if I want to save what's left of my life. One thing is certain, Rick Walters won't get away with this. Not if I have anything to say about it. The days that follow my conversation with Julia are tense, filled with a growing sense of dread. The truth she revealed has left me torn, caught between the urge to protect her and the anger that still simmers beneath the surface. But there's no time for indecision. If Rick Walters is as dangerous as Tyler and Julia have suggested, we need to act fast. I spend hours with Matt, laying out our plan. We decide to gather as much evidence as possible against Walters, hoping to build a case that will not only free Julia from his grasp, but also ensure he pays for everything he's done. Tyler, ever the loyal friend, agrees to help us, digging even deeper into Walters' network and connections. But as we move forward, I can't shake the feeling that something is off. Julia is cooperative, eager even, to help in any way she can. She provides details about her dealings with Walters, information that's crucial for our case. Yet, there's a part of me that remains suspicious. Her story, while plausible, has gaps, moments that don't quite add up. One evening, as I'm going through our notes, Matt calls me, his voice urgent. Tom, we need to meet. There's something you need to see. We arrange to meet at his office, a small, nondescript building in the heart of downtown. When I arrive, Matt is already there, pacing in front of his desk, a file in his hand. What's going on? I ask, closing the door behind me. He hands me the file, his expression grim. I've been doing some research on Julia's financial history, trying to find a link to Walters. But what I found instead, well, take a look. I open the file and start reading. It's a detailed report, outlining various transactions and accounts tied to Julia. At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary, just the usual bank statements, credit card bills, and loan payments. But then I see it, a series of large, unexplained transfers from an account I didn't recognize. What is this? I ask, pointing to the transactions. That's an offshore account registered in Julia's name, Matt explains. It's been active for years, but these large transfers started about a year ago, around the same time she supposedly got involved with Walters. I frown, trying to piece it together. So she's been hiding money? Matt nods. Looks that way. And not just a little, there's a significant amount in that account. I dug deeper, and it turns out the money wasn't coming from any legitimate sources. It's dirty money, Tom, laundered through various shell companies, all linked back to Walters. I feel the ground shift beneath me. Are you saying she's been working with him this whole time? I don't know, Matt says carefully. But it sure looks like she's been more involved than she let on. The money trail suggests she was part of his operation, not just a victim. A cold fury rises in me. Julia had spun a tale of desperation, painting herself as a woman trapped by circumstances beyond her control. But the evidence suggests something far darker, something that might mean she was complicit in Walter's schemes from the beginning. Where is she now? I ask, my voice tight. She's at your house, Matt replies. But Tom, before you do anything, we need to be sure. Confronting her without concrete proof could backfire. But I'm already moving, the need for answers overpowering any sense of caution. I drive home, my mind racing. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together, and the picture they form is one of betrayal far deeper than I ever imagined. When I arrive, Julia is in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looks up, surprised to see me home early. Tom, what's wrong? I hold up the file, my eyes locked on hers. I know about the offshore account, Julia. I know about the money. Her face drains of color, and for a moment, she says nothing. Then, she lets out a shaky breath, setting her phone down. Tom, I can explain. No more lies. I snap, cutting her off. I want the truth, all of it. Were you involved with Walters from the start? Was this all just a game to you? Tears well up in her eyes, but I can't tell if they're genuine or just another act. It wasn't a game, she says, her voice trembling. I didn't have a choice, Tom. I was in debt, serious debt. Walters offered me a way out, and I took it. But I never wanted to hurt you. You've been lying to me for years, I say, my voice low and dangerous. You didn't just cheat on me, you were working with that monster, laundering money, doing God knows what else. I was scared, she cries, stepping toward me. You have to believe me, Tom. I never wanted any of this. I thought I could fix it before you found out, but it just got worse. Walters kept pulling me deeper in, and I couldn't get out. Why didn't you come to me? I ask, the anger giving way to a painful sense of betrayal. We could have figured it out together. Because I knew you'd leave me, she says, her voice breaking. I knew you'd hate me for what I'd done. And I couldn't bear to lose you. I stare at her, the woman I once loved more than anything, now a stranger standing before me. The truth is out, and it's worse than I could have ever imagined. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was a willing participant in a criminal enterprise, lying to me every step of the way. I can't do this, I say finally, shaking my head. I can't forgive you, Julia. You destroyed everything we had. Her face crumples, and she collapses onto the couch, sobbing. Please, Tom, don't leave me. I can make it right, I'll do whatever it takes. But it's too late. The love I once felt has been replaced by a deep, burning hatred. I can't look at her without seeing the lies, the deceit, the betrayal. I turn away, heading for the door. Where are you going? She asks, panic rising in her voice. I'm leaving, I say coldly. I'm done with this, with you. I'll let Matt handle the divorce. You'll get what you deserve. I walk out, slamming the door behind me. The cool night air hits me like a slap, but I keep walking, my mind a blur of anger and pain. I don't know where I'm going, but I know I can't stay here, can't be anywhere near her. As I walk, my phone buzzes. It's a message from Tyler, found something big. Meet me at the usual place. I head to the bar where Tyler and I have met so many times before. When I arrive, he's already there, a grim look on his face. What is it? I ask, sliding into the booth. I dug deeper, Tyler says, his voice serious. I found out that Walters isn't just running some small-time operation. He's part of a larger network, one that's been under investigation for years. And Julia, she's been more involved than we thought. What do you mean? I ask, a sinking feeling in my stomach. She wasn't just a pawn, Tom, Tyler says, his eyes meeting mine. She was a partner. She's been working with Walters to launder money and move it through offshore accounts. And the kicker? She was planning to run, with or without you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Run? Where? Somewhere far away, Tyler says. She had plans to disappear, take the money and start over. I think the only reason she didn't was because you found out too soon. I sit back, stunned. The woman who had cried in front of me, begging for forgiveness, had been planning to abandon me all along. Everything she said, everything she did, it was all part of the act. So what do I do now? I ask, my voice hollow. We take this to the authorities, Tyler says. We hand over everything we've found, and we make sure she and Walters go down for this. I nod, feeling a sense of finality. There's nothing left to salvage, nothing left to fight for. The woman I loved is gone, replaced by a stranger who only brought destruction into my life. I'll do it, I say quietly. I'll go to the police. Tyler nods, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You're doing the right thing, Tom. It's time to end this. The next day, I walk into the police station, armed with the evidence we've gathered. As I sit down with the detective, laying out the full extent of Julia's betrayal, I feel a strange sense of peace. It's over. The lies, the deceit, the constant fear, it's all coming to an end. When I leave the station, I know I'll never see Julia again. The woman who once meant everything to me is now just a ghost, a reminder of how far a person can fall. The love we once shared has turned to ashes, consumed by hatred and betrayal. As I walk away, the sun setting behind me, I realize that this chapter of my life is finally closing. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never let myself be fooled like this again.